we're going to look at what is executive search and how does it fit in with my career strategy. So what is executive search? Shelda, do you want to jump in there first?
Happy to. I'm going to talk about search in the context of talent acquisition, leadership talent acquisition that organizations do. And I'm going to actually just use dating terminology because it's Valentine's Day and we're sharing the love. So there is internal talent acquisition. This is called in-house talent acquisition. Most large organizations have talent acquisition teams that may reach out to you as a candidate for a possible role. Now, the pitfalls of this can be that this is like a blind date. They found you on the net and you look good and they think you might fit the profile and they reach out to you. Then there is contingent search, where a client will engage with multiple search firms at a time or one search firm at a time. And they do not retain the firm. This is based on success. So when the firm finds the right candidate and the candidate gets hired, they get paid. This is a very reactive way of hiring. And I kind of look at this as speed dating because they're talking to multiple firms may reach out to you. They may advertise the position. They may actually put up ads on LinkedIn, on social media. They may get in, most contingent firms typically look into their databases to see, and if you're not a candidate in their database, then you're not a candidate for that search. So this is a little bit like speed dating. It's tricky. You may find the love of your life here, but you have to go through many times multiple consultants to get there. But right at the apex of this dating pyramid is the most elite matchmaking service, which is executive search. Here, clients retain firms. And this is a very, very proactive, consultative approach to finding the right leadership talent. You can expect that a retained firm that is reaching out to you knows its client very, very intimately. They know their business really well. They understand the values. They understand the culture. They know what's going to work in that company, what it takes to be successful in that organization. And they will spend a lot of time with you. They want to understand your career aspirations, your values. What are you looking for in the next career move? So I call this your best friend introducing you to the love of your life. And that really is what retained executive search is. It is absolutely the most elite talent matchmaking service that is available.
Thank you. I love that analogy, especially on Valentine's Day. John, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add, it's a very good summary that Shelley just made, is that the aim of executive search is really to connect client companies with passive talent for key leadership roles and also succession planning within their company. That's probably the only thing I would add to what was already said.
Thank you. Thanks, John. So how can candidates know if an executive search consultant is following the professional standards? It sounds as though it can be quite complicated out there sometimes. So Luke, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think search partners ultimately, and perhaps the difference between the different levels, we'll touch upon that today, is when we talk about maybe contingent versus retained, is that really search partners, you should expect them to act with a high level of integrity. You should expect them to be open, honest, informed. They should feel like a trusted advisor. So if you've got people in your life like that, on the legal profession or an accountant that you trust or a financial advisor, and it feels like there's a high level of knowledge that the person's got, that they're really acting in your best interests and also their client's best interest, it certainly would feel like they're following professional standards. And yeah, I think that's really what what you should be seeking. It should be a sense really that you get that they've an immediate sense you should get that they've got your best interests at heart. So yeah, that's probably what I would focus on. There's a myriad of things we could probably cover, but I think that should be really obvious from the outset.
So what are some of the common misconceptions about executive search? And a bit of a double question here. And how does executive search fit into the overall executive's career strategy? John, I'll pass to you for this one.
I think there are multiple misconceptions about executive search. One is that it's only for large corporations. In fact, it could be for startups or SMEs who want to find a top tier of management. Another one, it's only for C-level roles. In fact, it's for all leadership roles, typically within corporations. And I think there's probably a large misconception in the community now in terms of client hiring that contingent firms are as effective as retained firms. In fact, that's not the case. Retained firms have specific exclusive mandates to research assignments given to them, whereas contingent firms will have multiple roles from multiple clients at the same time. And typically their recruiters will obviously look to the easiest ones to close to get their commission. So I think there's a lot of misconception due to lack of knowledge and understanding of executive search in this day and age.
Thanks, John. And sorry, just building on that as well, how do you see the executive search fitting into our executives' career strategy? How should they be looking at an executive search firm for their career builds?
I think executives need to make relationships with multiple different executive search firms. They should be looking at the senior partners within executive search firms in their location, within their industry, developing relationships so that when there are opportunities, the executive search firms in their industry, in their location, in their region will come to them first and keep on their radar at all times.
Thanks. Good build on there. Luke, do you want to add to that? Are you seeing anything different?
Yeah, look, I think to build on what John was saying, contingent firms would have a higher volume. Therefore, I think misconception would be that executive search firms also have multiple opportunities per month, and that's not the case. Sometimes we may only have one correct opportunity that's in the sweet spot every 6 months or maybe every year. I mean, I've got some candidates I've worked with where I've called them, once in 2 years for the exact right role. At the right time with the right brief, and they've gone, how have you remembered me? But look, ultimately that's to kind of Shelter's point earlier, we're talking about pinpointing and matchmaking. So I think that's probably a misconception, and then it becomes, and we'll come on to it later, about, well, how do you therefore work with someone who may call you or interact with you once every year or once every 2 years, it might be the case. And how do you build a relationship? So we'll sort of come on to that. But I think that is a misconception. And we ultimately work for the client in that sense. So, we have finite amounts of time during the week to be able to be proactive, whereas probably our counterparts in contingent have a lot of time to be proactive because they're really working with the candidate on their search. So there is a bit of a difference there in terms of how we approach it. Just to kind of preempt that question as well, Sarah, I think, and again, to build on what John said, in terms of kind of how you should be, how does executive search fit into your overall strategy? I had an interesting conversation today with an executive candidate who said to me that it's going to be 20% weighting of the kind of buckets that they were going to be using for their search, which made a lot of sense. I think if you're putting 100%, and that's all you're doing, and you're only speaking to executive search partners, I think that is a mistake, because at the level we're discussing, it's very likely that the opportunity will come through your network. So you should be really weighting your effort across, if you're in transition, weighting your effort across not only executive search, but also looking at your own network and approaching companies directly. So I would say that it forms part of should never form all of, for the reasons I've just discussed.
Great, thanks, Luke. So if we move on to navigate an executive search as a candidate, so let's put our candidate hats on at the moment. What makes a good, bad candidate to work with? So Shelja, let's go back to you.
So I'm going to steer away from the bad candidate. I'm just going to focus on what is a great or a good candidate. And if you're not that, then naturally assume that you're a bad candidate. But I think that there are the 3 C's that we look for when we're engaging with candidates. The first is clarity. That are you clear about your own career objectives? If you're not, talk to us about it. But we want you to approach searches or mandates that we discuss with you with clarity. What do you want as an outcome of the process? I think the second would be communication. We want to talk and engage with candidates, or we like to engage more with candidates that are open, that are responsive, that are punctual. They respond within a 24-hour time frame. The worst thing is when you send out an email or a WhatsApp or a text, and then you're waiting for a response, sometimes for days and sometimes for weeks. I think the third C is really collaboration. How do you really connect and collaborate with your search partner? Are you on time for meetings? Are you briefing them before your meeting, debriefing them after the meeting? These are some of the things that we do expect that candidates would do. And I think then there is the overall, the overarching bit about honesty and integrity, which is that be transparent, tell us very honestly about compensation. I think it becomes very difficult for a search consultant when you've gone through a process and you've shared compensation and suddenly it's a different compensation at the end of the process. Those things become very difficult to manage with the client. So we want transparency and honesty at every step of the process with the candidate. And lastly, it's intention. If you're not serious about an opportunity and you're just exploring it, I think it's better to tell the consultant, the partner on the other side, that I'm in an exploratory phase. It becomes very difficult when you go through an entire process and several meetings, and at the end of it, you say, well, I don't think this is the right opportunity for me. So I think that these are some of the elements where, we look at what is a great candidate, the ones who are very clear, who communicate very effectively, and who collaborate with us, and they're completely honest and transparent. And then they're good candidates, and then there are the others.
And John, is there anything, when we look at trends, are we seeing different trends in different parts of the region?
Look, I'll do it from a Bangkok, Thailand point of view. I think there was significant tech layoffs last year in Thailand. The economy is growing slowly. The macroeconomic situation is not great, potential recession in America and Europe. This all has an effect on local hiring driven by global HQs from MNCs. So I think slow growth and a slow expansion for companies is kind of the watchword for certainly for Thailand and probably Southeast Asia. I think, kind of go back to what Nancy was saying, there are opportunities for particular skills which are in demand: AI, robotics, data science, automation, project management skills, digital transformation. I think people with skills in those areas at a senior level, there is demand for that. But in general scale, it's a slow hiring season.
Thanks, Luke. Going to Australia, anything different there, or fairly similar landscape?
It does sound quite similar to what Nancy and John are saying. Inflationary market here. We've had 13 rate increases from a mortgage perspective, and most of the people we're dealing with at the C-suite typically have a mortgage and have school fees and other things that they're considering. So yeah, look, that has impacted broadly consumer. Obviously, retail consumer is a big part of the Australian economy. So that has had an impact, which has been great for the RBA, not great for my firm and others. And look, I think ultimately, when I sort of think about, is now a good time to make a transition? Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, to be honest, any time is actually a good time to make a transition if it's the right role for you. If you're thinking of leaving an organization and don't have clarity on where you're heading, well, now's probably not the time to be really bullish and try and beat the market. Now's the time to kind of accept that there are macro factors affecting everything, and to be a bit more discerning. We're obviously seeing candidates coming through, and as we're talking to them passively, passive candidates, and we're talking to them and headhunting them about roles, they have some caution. Whereas in a bull market, you're talking to them about roles and they're full of optimism and excitement. So yeah, I wouldn't try and beat the market is what I'm saying. I would accept that we are in some trying times. We are, hopefully bottoming out and coming back up. And we've seen some green shoots in Australia, which is really exciting. But it's not the time to be, it's the time to be risk averse. It's not the time to be taking chances with your career. Wait till you see some green shoots is my view.